Your gut bacteria are fermenting your breakfast right now. And most people over 60 have no idea that what happens in the next 4 hours determines whether their heart lining actually does with the food you eat, especially after 60, when the gut changes in ways that most doctors never explain. Today, I want to talk about something that genuinely surprised me when I started looking at the research: peanut butter. Ordinary, affordable peanut butter. Because what the gut does with it is not what most people expect. And the downstream effects, from muscle function to cardiovascular protection to cognitive sharpness, all of it starts here, in the intestine. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 specific things that happen inside your body when you eat peanut butter every single day after 60. Not just what happens, but the mechanism, the actual biology. Because that's the part most videos on this topic completely skip over. Stay with me through number 4. That's where we get into something most people would never connect to a jar of peanut butter, and the research behind it genuinely changed how I think about this food. And stay through number 6, because the gut-brain connection we'll cover there is something I wish more doctors had time to explain in a 15-minute appointment. Now, number 1 is where everything else begins, and it begins in the gut. Peanut butter is rich in prebiotic fiber and polyphenols. 2 tablespoons deliver roughly 2 grams of fiber, along with resveratrol, picoumaric acid. They travel to the large intestine, where your gut bacteria are waiting. And what those bacteria do with those compounds is the mechanism that drives every benefit downstream. Systematic review published in the British Journal of Nutrition, PMID 32713355, analyzed the effects of nut and peanut consumption on the human gut microbiome. The findings were consistent. Prebiotic fiber and polyphenols from peanuts selectively feed beneficial bacterial species, increasing microbial diversity in ways that matter for inflammation, metabolism, and immune function. What we know is that gut microbiome diversity declines with age, and that decline is directly connected to increased systemic inflammation, weaker immune responses, and slower recovery from illness. What peanut butter's compounds do is reverse part of that trajectory. Not dramatically, not overnight, but consistently, day by day, tablespoon by tablespoon, feeding the bacteria that produce the metabolites your body needs. And here's what makes this so important. The gut doesn't just digest food, it just manufactures signaling compounds that reach every organ in your body. So when you understand what peanut butter does at the microbial level, you understand why it shows up in data on your heart, your muscles, and your brain. Moving on to number 2, which is directly downstream of number 1. When your gut bacteria ferment the prebiotic fiber in peanut butter, one of the primary metabolites they produce is butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid. And butyrate is one of the most important compounds your gut makes. A comprehensive narrative review published in Frontiers on Pharmacology, PMID 35185583, documented butyrate's cardio effects in detail. Systemic inflammation, regulates lipid and glucose metabolism, and has demonstrated cardioprotective effects across multiple experimental models. The mechanism matters here. When your gut lining is healthy and producing adequate butyrate, inflammatory signals that would otherwise leak into the bloodstream get blocked at the intestinal wall. That means lower circulating inflammation, less oxidative stress in the arterial lining, and better endothelial function. Nitric oxide production improves. Blood vessels relax more efficiently. Blood pressure responds. And this isn't theoretical. A study published in Nature Medicine in June 2024 analyzed a large prospective cohort of older adults and found that people with younger microbial age, meaning a gut microbiome that maintained youthful diversity, had measurably lower cardiovascular risk even among those who were metabolically unhealthy. The gut microbiome, through metabolites like butyrate, was counteracting the cardiovascular damage that age and metabolic dysfunction were producing. That's the real mechanism at play. The cardiovascular protection associated with peanut butter isn't just the unsaturated fats, which are real and important. Right. It's also what your gut bacteria make from the fiber and polyphenols. And that's the part that most videos on this topic completely skip over. Let me show you what's actually happening inside your body in terms of inflammation. And let me walk you through an illustrative scenario that I think will make this concrete. Let's call her Margaret, 68, retired school administrator from Ohio. Margaret came to see me after 2 years of blood work that consistently showed elevated CRP, a marker of systemic inflammation, without any obvious explanation. She was sleeping adequately, she wasn't overweight, but she was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix, and her joints ached in the morning in a way her primary care doctor had attributed simply to age. When we looked at her gut microbiome profile, what we found was textbook inflammaging, reduced bacterial diversity, depleted butyrate-producing species, and a gut lining showing early signs of increased permeability. Inflammatory signals were leaking through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream continuously, not dramatically, quietly. This is the pattern I see in my practice every single week. And it's the same pattern the research is now connecting directly to what we eat, or more precisely, what we're not feeding our gut bacteria. Butyrate specifically restores that barrier. It tightens the junctions between intestinal cells, reduces the permeability that allows endotoxins to enter the bloodstream, and directly suppresses inflammatory cytokines. When you consistently give your gut bacteria the prebiotic compounds in peanut butter, you're supporting the system that keeps that background inflammation from running too hot. This isn't alternative medicine. This is gastroenterology catching up with itself. The science on this is clearer than most people realize, and the connection runs straight from what's on your breakfast plate to what's circulating in your bloodstream 4 hours later. Now, coming up at number 4, I want to show you something. The research revealed that I genuinely did not expect. It connects the gut directly to something most people assume has nothing to do with digestion. Now, this one deserves its own section because the research behind it is something most people have never heard explained. A systematic review published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and for Public Health, PMID 39270-637, analyzed 12 studies involving adults age 50 and older, specifically looking at the relationship of strength and physical performance. The findings were striking. Higher abundance of butyrate-producing bacteria was associated with better grip strength, better gait speed, and better overall physical function. Reduced microbial diversity was directly associated with more severe sarcopenia. Let me be really honest here. When I first read this research, I had to read it twice, because what it's telling us is that the gut microbiome is sending signals that affect how well your muscles function. The mechanism involves butyrate acting on muscle, protein synthesis pathways, reducing the inflammatory load that accelerates muscle breakdown, and improving the metabolic efficiency of muscle tissue. And then, earlier this year, a randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia, and Muscle, PMID 416333, took this even further. Followed 108 older adults, average age 76, who were at risk of falls for 6 months. One group received a daily serving of peanut butter, the other received usual care. At 6 months, the peanut butter group showed significant improvements in the 5-time sit-to-stand test and in lower body muscle power. That's not a minor finding.
Yeah.
A daily serving of peanut butter in a properly controlled trial measurably improved functional muscle performance in adults over 70. And the pathway that connects the peanut butter to the muscle result runs directly through the gut. Now let's talk about blood sugar, because this is something almost every person over 60 should understand. So, with diabetes. After 60, insulin sensitivity declines. Blood sugar spikes more easily and the crafter meals, even when you just ate. Over years, this pattern damages blood vessels, strains the pancreas, and sets up the conditions for type 2 diabetes. Peanut butter works as a blood sugar stabilizer through 3 mechanisms working together. The protein slows the conversion of carbohydrates into glucose. The healthy fat further slows digestion, spreading glucose absorption over a longer window. And the prebiotic fiber feeds the gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate and propionate, which act directly on the receptors in the intestinal lining that regulate how fast glucose enters the bloodstream. That last part is the one most people miss entirely. The blood sugar benefit isn't just mechanical, fiber slowing digestion, it's also a gut-mediated signal that operates at the cellular level. The two systems amplify each other. And the reason this matters for what I'm about to show you in number 6 is that blood sugar stability and gut-brain signaling are deeply connected. When glucose enters the bloodstream gradually, the gut sends a different set of signals to the brain than when it spikes. What happens next is something I think most people over 60 genuinely need to hear. Moving on to number 6, and this is the gut-brain. The science on this connection wasn't understood 10 years ago. Now it is. The gut and the brain communicate continuously through the vagus nerve, through circulating metabolites, and through inflammatory signals that cross the blood-brain barrier. When the gut is producing adequate butyrate and keeping systemic inflammation low, the brain benefits directly. Butyrate crosses into the brain and acts as a neuroprotective agent. It reduces neuroinflammation, supports the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a compound essential for the survival and growth of neurons, and has been shown in experimental models to improve cognitive performance and protect against the processes that lead to cognitive decline. And the polyphenols in peanut butter, particularly p-coumaric acid and quercetin, add another layer. These compounds reduce oxidative stress, specifically in brain tissue. Chronic brain oxidative stress is one of the primary drivers of the cognitive changes people experience after 60. The word-finding difficulty, the processing speed that feels a little slower, the concentration that doesn't hold the way it used to. I know what some of you are thinking right now. Dr. Cruz, I eat reasonably well and I still notice these things. And I hear that constantly. Here's what the research suggests. The issue often isn't what you're eating in general, it's whether you're consistently feeding the specific bacterial populations that produce the metabolites your brain depends on. That's a much more precise question, and it has a much more precise answer. And number 7 brings everything back to where we started, the intestinal lining itself. After 60, the gut lining undergoes structural changes. The tight junctions between intestinal cells become looser. Microbial diversity, the mucus layer that protects the lining, thins. All of this increases intestinal permeability, and what researchers have connected to elevated systemic inflammation, impaired immune function, and worse metabolic outcomes across every organ downstream. Butyrate is the primary fuel source for colonocytes, the cells that line the colon. When your gut bacteria produce adequate butyrate from the fiber you eat, those cells get the energy they need to maintain structural integrity. The tight junctions tighten. The mucus layer thickens, the barrier holds. What most doctors are treating as separate conditions is actually one problem, and it starts here. Here's how I would actually approach this if I were incorporating peanut butter daily with the gut in mind. 2 tablespoons in the morning is the practical target. Spread on whole grain bread or stirred into oatmeal. Whole grains pair with the prebiotic fiber in peanut butter to give your gut bacteria a more complete substrate for fermentation. You get more butyrate production, more microbial. Choose natural peanut butter. Ingredients should read peanuts and possibly salt, nothing else. Partially hydrogenated oils, added sugars, modified starches interfere with the very compounds that make this food worth eating. If the oil separates, that's the sign you chose correctly. 2 tablespoons. Natural variety, paired with complex carbohydrates, every day. That's the protocol the research supports. And the changes are cumulative, not immediate. What you're building over weeks and months is a microbial environment that generates better metabolites consistently. That's how the gut works, and that's how this works. Every organ in your body is downstream of your gut, and now you understand one more way to take care of it. If you want to go deeper on the gut-heart connection specifically, including what blood markers actually tell us about intestinal health in older adults, I have a video that covers exactly that. It's the natural next step from what we covered today. Click on it now. And if this kind of content is useful to you, subscribe. We're covering the connections that most 15-minute appointments never have time to explain. And that's exactly the work I want to do here.